Swimming like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Welcome back to another episode of the Shrimp Tank, coming to you virtually from Seattle and the entire beautiful, sunny PNW, the Pacific Northwest. Look, if you want to learn how to start, grow, or run a successful business, we think this is the podcast for you. It's where we say street smarts and book smarts collide. Hello again, everyone. I'm Dan Whedon, and my co-host is Craig Swanson. Glad to have Craig back. Our guest today is Aaron Edward. Aaron, growing up in Seattle, established one of the city's largest residential house painting companies while fueling his adventurous spirit as an extreme sports athlete, spending years abroad kite surfing and big mountain skiing. I'm looking forward to talking about all of that. Now, his pursuit of personal growth has led him to the world of ultra marathon running. Craig, I don't know if you're going to be wanting to go ultra marathon running after talking to Aaron. We'll see, because he is challenging his physical and mental limits. His dynamic journey inspires others to embrace their passions and live a life filled with purpose and adventure. I don't know about you, Craig, but I can't wait to talk to him. Welcome, Aaron. Everyone, listen, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, and of course, Craig, for you, Overcast. We are ubiquitous. And now we are open for business with our patron membership, the Shrimp Peelers, offering exclusive content to grow your business and enrich your life. You'll find access on our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Now, before we bring on Aaron, hello there, Craig. How are you?
I am doing great. How are you doing, Dan? You look fired up today. You enjoying the weather?
Fired up. The sun, you can't see it out here, but my window's right there. The sun is out. It's beautiful. You mentioned my nice tan. I've been out playing golf. How about you? Are you enjoying the weather?
I am loving it. I'm doing a lot of coding these days, so I jump between an air-conditioned office, then I go out and I'm part of the sun and everything else. And the weeding is getting me outside. Like I'm weeding and doing just some kind of like general yard work right now. So
if you take off the G, you'd be doing some weeding, but that's okay anyway. Okay, that's enough of that. Listen, a funny thing happened to me on my way to Portland last week. Barb and I were going down for a party, a celebration for a friend of ours who lives down there. It's gonna be a one-night stay, and it kind of feels, because we watched the grandkids a lot, especially Barb, kind of felt like we were on a date. And it was kind of our anniversary time. So 37 years, we thought, holy cow, it feels like we're on a date. We're driving down from our home down to Portland. It's about 3 hours and enjoying a beautiful trip. It's great out. And something suddenly struck me, Craig. I realized I had not packed our overnight bag. I knew it. I asked Barb, did you pack it? And she looked at me like I was crazy. She goes, you packed it, right? I didn't pack it. And so she said, we looked at our options, and it wasn't like we were going to come back that night. So we had to figure something out. So she said, why don't you take the next exit and we'll double check and we'll see what we're doing. Took the next exit. And you know what I ran straight into? A bunch of fast food restaurants and a Walmart. In Walmart, Craig, you would know this. You can get toothpaste, you can get toothbrushes, you can get brushes. I even got a shirt to sleep in because the room is so cold when Barb turns the air conditioning on. It was like I got everything I needed for my one night stay. Have you ever had any experience where you've completely, and by the way, we were dressed already for the event, which made a huge, huge difference. Have you ever had anything like that happen to you?
You know, I used to like when I was younger, I felt like the ultimate luxury was just jumping on a flight without anything, like just, jumping on a flight and just dealing with it when I got there. Then marriage, kids, house, all that. Like I haven't actually done that type of thing in probably a couple decades, but listening to this, it kind of makes me just want to just go take off and just look, to survive.
Let's be clear. I didn't do it on purpose. This was, this was my adventure. This was my sense of adventure. But Craig, you've introduced me to Aaron. Aaron, I think his sense of adventure is way more extreme and fun.
Like ours is here.
Yeah, he's way up there. So Aaron, I want to welcome you into the show. I am, I mentioned my adventure. It's a first world mishap, of course. We were able to certainly survive one night in a nice hotel. It sounds like you're doing a lot more fun, adventurous things, and I want to find out about those. Tell us about your adventuring.
Aaron's adventuring. Yeah, I don't know if that qualifies as an adventure, that your Walmart mishap, but that was an interesting story. My adventures are more like, you know, death-defying feats in the mountains, or endurance feats. Like I've gotten into ultra running a little bit lately, but really, like, I think my first taste of the adventure life was when I got seriously into skiing, or maybe before that, even like just backpacking around, like Craig was saying, just like hopping on a plane and figuring it out. I dropped out of college when I was around age 20, and I was studying business, but I already kind of had a business doing the house painting thing early on, and just real small time. And then I would just take the off seasons, like, so house painting in Seattle is kind of like a 6-month season, April through October, and then it starts raining. And then, most of the jobs are exterior painting, so it really slows down. So what I would do, I was just work for April till October, and then once October rolled around, I would take off. And like my first big adventure was New Zealand. I went backpacking around for like 2.5 months in New Zealand by myself. That was really cool. And then I did other trips in Europe and Peru and stuff. And then I got interested in skiing. I've always been a skier, but I started focusing like more and more. And then finally I just started committing. So then instead of doing my gallivanting around foreign countries, I would go to Whistler or Jackson Hole and just either like I spent some seasons like in Jackson Hole. I like slept at the Cache Creek Motel for months, like at like they have a little kitchenette, and they give me like a monthly rate. Or in Whistler, I like slept on my friend's floor for a few seasons, and I would just ski every day, like 100 days a year. And that was like my thing.
Sounds great. And then in the meantime, you're also building one of Seattle's largest residential painting companies in town. Maybe you could just like kind of bring this together, like just kind of like walk us through like where you started and how you built the company, and just kind of like you already talked about like the adventures. Now you're basically working like during the summer, which sounds like a really cool gig. But just walk us through that path that got you, because it's a fairly unique and special path.
Yeah. So after spending like 5 years full-time skiing, I kind of reached a plateau where it was more like getting to the next level started to get really dangerous. And I started to see the bad consequences of the extreme sports things, people getting hurt, people dying in the mountains. And so then I switched to kite surfing. It was a little more mellow, spent a few off seasons in Mexico. But then I was kind of taking less and less time off, and like slowly spending more and more time on the business. And then like around like four years ago or so, I started getting connected into the industry, and I met one guy in particular that really inspired me, because at the time I was doing like less than $1 million in revenue, and he was doing like 5 million in revenue and making like $1 million a year in profit. So he's like 20% net. And he was like one of the most successful painting contractors, residential guys like in the nation. And basically he just kind of showed me the model of what was possible. I was already kind of doing the same model as him, and he was a few years younger than me. And he kind of just showed me what was possible to scale the business. And that's what inspired me to shift from, I kind of did all the adventure stuff that I really wanted to do, and I was getting like diminishing returns. And then I decided like the next big adventure would be scaling the company up.
Well, let me go back in time a little bit to you. You started the company very young, correct?
Yeah.
How old were you?
Well, when I was 19, I did an internship with College Works Painting, and that's how I got into the business. And then the year after that, I was just started off in my own company, but it was just like painting a few houses a year, and then a few more.
Well, when we talk about being adventuresome, becoming an entrepreneur can be an adventure for all of us and create that. What kind of did you have any kind of fear or anything starting that young, or was it like maybe many of your other adventures, you just dove into it?
I remember at one point I had a kind of a tumultuous college experience where I was a really good student in high school. I had like really high grades and whatnot. So I got into a good school, Whitman College in Walla Walla, which is like hard to get into and like prestigious, but I didn't like it. It was very small and wasn't my vibe. So I ended up going to Western Washington University, and like that didn't work out. And then I ended up at a community college. I remember making the decision. I was like, I kept downgrading colleges, and I was like, maybe colleges just like aren't their thing for me, you know? And so I just decided, why not just drop out? And I figured I can always like, I have this painting company. It's like a few years old. It seems like a fallback. Like, I don't see how I could really like totally be, it seemed like I had enough of a fallback to like, I could always go back to like painting houses. Could always go back to like living at my parents' house if I needed to. Like, it didn't seem like it was too crazy of a risk, but I do remember like making that decision, and it was like, do I just like give up on college? And like, yeah, I think it's not too crazy.
Okay. And I assume now you also do you employ a lot of painters out of college, or because I assume that is a lot. Well, let me put it this way. I remember painting when I was in college. Like, and I think I did a couple house painting jobs for what felt like really great cash when I was young.
Yeah.
Probably did a crappy job, but like there I was doing it. So what's the difference between like just kind of like doing this thing on the side, paying some of your bills, and then like doubling down and like really taking it to where you've taken it?
Well, like I was saying, like I think the inspiration for seeing what's possible in the business is really what switched it up, you know.
Mhm.
Going from like a lifestyle business where I remember I would tell people in like my ski resort towns and stuff, like, oh yeah, I just like work 6 months and then take 6 months off. And like, oh man, you're living the dream. And it was kind of like the dream lifestyle, you know, but then that only gets you so far. And I would see like, you know, like 45-year-old guys, like they call them like the Peter Pan bros, where they're just like, they never grew up and they're just like still in like they still like kind of seem like a 25-year-old guy, like skiing every day. And like, you know, it's good for a while, but like at a certain point, like the self-development and like the next level of like human evolution, you know, you have to keep expanding. So I realized that to the man that I'm going to have to become to run like a huge organization, that's going to drive so much personal development. And like, I really enjoy leadership and mentorship and like just all the opportunities that are going to come up from growing a large organization. Like it'll launch so much other things, you know, so much more opportunity.
You know, you said this a couple times, so I'm curious because you mentioned 6 months with our weather here and all that. I looked on your website, which is very impressive. You do some interior work too. Obviously, interior work you can do at any time of the year.
Yeah.
How is the painting business in the Pacific Northwest as seasonal as it might appear, or is that opportunity to do interior work, does that help out full time?
Yeah, like now that I'm more concentrated on it, we'll keep some crews busy through the winter, but still it's like 70% exterior. So it's definitely heavily seasonal still. But it's just that now, even though our workload drops in the wintertime, I can still spend that time like scaling up and like making big moves for the next year, you know? So that's like kind of the business development time, even though we're not super busy with jobs as we are in the summertime.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I was really struck by. I love that phrase. The man I'm going to need to become to be able to scale the business into what it's going to become. You phrase something like that. I don't know. Like when you picture that, just like, do you have any like a little idea of what that man looks like? What do you need to learn?
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, like even today, like over the last few years, I've seen the business grow from like when I decided to scale it up, you know, I was doing like 800,000 a year or something. It was just me and a bunch of subcontractors, and I pretty much did everything in the business. And that's really not a business. That's like a job. That's like being self-employed, right? So scaling the company up, now we have like 2 full-time sales reps. We have I hired like a director of operations / president, and now I'm starting to like see impact where like I'm taking guys that are maybe they're making like 60K a year or something, and now they're making like double that or triple that, and like they like say like, wow, you changed my life. Or and just like that's just the beginning, that's just the first few years. So like me being able to like provide that mentorship and that vision and like inspire people, I feel like the companies are kind of like the modern day community. Like we spend most of our lives at work. So like, and how many people just have shitty jobs they just go to and they're just like ho hum, like it's kind of like lame, I'd rather be somewhere else. But like it's the very few companies that are like able to create a culture of people like that actually want to be there. So I think it's like important.
Well, thank you. And what is important, at least for us, is we got to pay the bills, Aaron. So we're going to take a short break to hear from today's spotlight sponsor. And when we come back with our guest, Aaron Edward, for our hot or not section of the show, probably going to throw him a pretty big, easy pitch. I got a layup here because I'm going to ask him about ultra marathon running. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. EO Accelerator is a coaching program for Seattle area business owners who want to grow their existing small businesses beyond $1 million in annual revenue. As a small business owner, you face new challenges every day, whether it's deciding how you're going to fill a rush of new orders, puzzling out where to find new customers, or sweating about making payroll. If you find yourself wishing you had an instruction manual for your business, at EO Accelerator, our mission is to empower entrepreneurs with the tools, accountability, and community to aggressively grow and master their business. This is more than theory. This is entrepreneurs helping entrepreneurs, with top Seattle business leaders who have been where you are, volunteering as coaches and mentors in the Accelerator program. Because the hustle will only get you so far. The next level of success is a team sport. Want to hit $1 million in revenue? Join the club.
All right. Thank you, Dan, and welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we interview the best and the brightest CEOs and thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area. I'm Craig Swanson, and our guest today is Aaron Edward for our next segment, Hot or Not.
And Aaron, I kind of fumbled. I was trying to figure out how to say softball. I was going to throw you a softball. Craig and I are going to pepper you with questions. Some will be, maybe softer than others, but we're going to ask you if the concept or topic is hot or not, and then why or why not. I mentioned ultra marathon running. I think this is an easy one. You're probably going to say hot. I'm really curious, though, if it is hot, how you got into it, why that was one of those those extreme sports you wanted to do.
It's definitely hot. One of my colleagues in the painting industry, Jason Paris, he's another one of the top dudes in the residential painting industry in the country. He ran 100-mile ultra, and I was like, damn, 100 miles, that's pretty impressive. But I mean, if Jason can do it, I can definitely do it, So that was just like my inspiration. And also, I'm an adventuresome type of guy. So like, as I kind of like toned down my mountain adventures a little bit, not doing it as much anymore, kite surfing and skiing, you have to it's a lot of rigmarole to get out there and do it. But like with ultra running, like I can go out, just like run out outside my door and go on a training run. And then it keeps me fit for like big adventures in the mountains. Like I just did like a 17-mile thing in the Tianaways last weekend where we hit like 5 peaks and did some mountain scrambling. So it's just a way to like keep me connected to my adventure spirit but like also goes well because I can just I can go running out my door anytime, whether I'm at the office or at home.
Well, Aaron, it's interesting. I was thinking about even driving 100 miles and my mind would I don't even know what I'd think about. I'd get distracted. I'd get bored, all of those different things I'd have to be doing and have a podcast on or music. What do you do? If you're running 100 miles, you have a lot of time to be inside of your head. And I'm just curious, what do you do to I think, stay undistracted? Because you've got to really work at this over the course of time.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I just started this year training. I ran my first ultra like a month ago. That was just a 50K, so one of the shorter distances. So I haven't done the 100 yet, but I actually raced a 10K yesterday. Um, I was also an athlete in high school running cross country and track. And I don't know, it's just nice to, even like in this 10K, the only thing I'm thinking about the whole time is like, how am I feeling? And like, how can I get the most out of my body? Same thing in like the 50K race where I'm just like, I'm thinking about the race and like thinking about the body, or I'm thinking in the mountains, like when I'm like scrambling up, like, like doing like rock climbing moves, like I'm just only thinking about that. And like that's kind of the draw of these like adventure type sports, is that it's kind of a hack to get you into present moment. Like if you're a great meditator or something, you don't necessarily need that, but it's just like a quick way to get there, because especially when you get into like these super, if it's super painful ultra moment, or you're in the mountains and like you can't fall or you're going to die, it's like you have to be 100% there. There's no other choice. So that's kind of the allure.
So I'm going to shift a little bit. You talked a little bit about hinting that you might have some personal projects coming up around this, but I want to ask, hot or not, podcasting, either as a listener or as a speaker?
Podcasting super hot, Craig. You guys know. Super growing industry. It's awesome. Content creation in general, whether it's a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever. I think it's like the next big thing. People trust people they get to know on long form content, and then just creates an amazing base for whatever else you want to launch. Like you have a group of fans that buy into, like, are interested in what you have to say, then that just like opens up so much opportunity. So I'm going to be launching a podcast. I've recorded a few episodes, not live yet. I have no official name. It's a secret yet. It's still the name, but it's going to be based on like, CEO, founder, visionary people that are on a kind of like a similar journey as me, that are further ahead, ideally, that have grown like these big companies and made big impacts, and kind of like what drives those people, and just like hearing those stories. And I think it's interesting to hear like their reason, their motivation, and yeah, the whole story.
I'm going to jump out of hot or not because I'm just really truly interested with what you're talking about. And I look at you and I recognize you're a young guy and you've got a whole big future in front of you. I'm curious as to how much you've thought about where you want to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15, even 20. And I know it's hard to look past 3 years anymore,
Yeah.
but what is your kind of long-term goal as far as how much will you be working in the paint business? Will it be scaled out so it's being run totally by itself so you can do more of your adventure things? How much strategic planning are you doing on that so you can set up a path?
That's a great question. It's something I've thought about a decent amount. And that was kind of I had like an aha moment where for a while, like I was inspired by my friend Garrett, who I met, that had that $5 million company that was making $1 million a year. And from a financial perspective, I'm not like a super luxurious type of motivated person where I like want to get a lot of money to buy a lot of things. Like there's no way I need more than $1 million a year, to have a good lifestyle. So to me, I was like, okay, let me just like get there, and then I'll, go do something else that I'm more interested in. But what I realized is that the energy of that is not very inspiring. And also, if you try and stabilize at those smaller revenue levels, then like you create a situation where like the employees have nowhere to go. So like, there's no upward mobility for them in the company. So you're going to have people that are going to stay with you for a couple of years and they're going to leave to go find bigger opportunities. And it's just like not an exciting atmosphere. So, and also for me, like, what's the excitement behind like, let me spend a few years to get here, and then I'll go do something else. That's kind of like my heart's not really in it, So I shifted to thinking like, okay, what if I grew to like 100 million in revenue, and then I started meeting people that like had done that and like sold home improvement companies that were like $120 million a year in revenue. And like I started getting that mentorship from those people and like their thought process and all the impact that they've been able to make. So I set that as my new goal. So like in 8 years, I calculated if I can just grow like 50% a year, I'll be at 100 million in eight years or so. So we've been on track for that, like growing like 50% year over year, and just got to like keep growing step by step and making big strides every year. And I see myself like, I think if I can get to 100 million then as like an involved founder CEO, and then possibly have the opportunity to exit, or I can't predict what will happen at that point, but I see that as kind of like an inflection point. Like if I can get to 100 million, then I can create like either systematize business where I can kind of step away a little bit, or I can sell it and like get an exit, and then I can start doing like other stuff that's, you know, going to be maybe like some angel investing, more focused on podcasting, speaking, or just like whatever other adventure is next.
I don't know. I kind of love that. I'm kind of picturing like your own version of your Peter Pan Pro is going to be, you know, the exiting CEO at 45, or, you know, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
All right. So like, I'm just going to throw in a hot or not, like you've kind of addressed this, but like scaling a business versus a lifestyle business. What's the difference and what's hotter for you?
Well, yeah, scaling is definitely hotter for me. Like
Mhm.
I've touched on like the personal development side of like what's like a lifestyle business is kind of like a status quo, where it's kind of like your business is no longer really fueling your personal expansion, which is okay if that's what you choose, and you can get other stuff that's fulfilling you. But for me, I would prefer at this point for my business to like be a key driver of like my personal growth and scaling up. And who knows like what the experience will be at these like, you know, 10x revenue levels that I'm at now. It's going to be totally different.
You know, I know that we are a very data-driven world today, especially with all of the technology, all of the AI. And I know that you're probably using a lot of data and metrics in your painting business. I'm wondering about, what do you use from a fitness standpoint, from a health standpoint, while you're doing some of the, whether it's ultra marathon running or other adventure things? Are you keeping statistics and metrics and tracking that is helping you understand where you are health-wise, fitness-wise, all of those things? Talk a little bit about that.
As far as the fitness side, there is some advanced metrics you can that I've tracked with. I had a coach help me, and like you can, you know, wear a heart rate monitor, get that data, and then you can run the software like trainingpeaks.com. It will run like, it will calculate your effort based on your heart rate, your time, your elevation, gain, all this stuff. I don't see it as like a total game changer. I think for me, it's like I have a good enough sense of just like based on how many miles I'm running and that thing. So I'm not getting like crazy benefit on any like advanced data for fitness stuff. But as far as business stuff and like the AI, I think that's going to be, I'm excited about that, because home improvement, blue collar stuff, first of all, it's not getting disrupted, because like I'm not like a copywriter could get totally disrupted, right? Like their jobs could possibly going away, but you're not going to replace painters with AI. And also blue collar businesses are typically like really behind the times in terms of like systematization software and all this stuff. So like, and the bar is so low for contractors. Like contractors are like the number one most complained about industry in the nation. Like literally they're always number one or number two on the polls, like them and used car salesmen. Like if you know, I'm sure you guys have all had some bad contractor experiences, right? So like, even if you just answer the phone, you're like ahead of the crowd, right? So if you can stack AI tools on top of that and start to lower overhead, and then offshore some of this like back end office accounting, and like really like get a lean business model, we're going to be able to really like make leaps and bounds and separate ourselves from 99% of like the competition.
You know, you got my brain thinking. I'm loving the idea of like what you could do for contractors with AI, and absolutely like just getting them to invoice you at the end of a project, even if they showed up, is a challenge sometimes.
Can I throw out one AI thing that I learned recently at the
Absolutely.
I went to the EO Canada conference. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but it was like the
Mhm.
EO One Canada, and then they had some good speakers. Anyways, my friend Mike Schwartz up there from EO Vancouver, he had this intriguing story where he's really into AI and what the business applications of AI, and he took a so he'll work with clients, like, and one of the examples was like an automotive, something to do with automotive, and like they had all these technical manuals about like engines, transmissions, like, so they uploaded all these technical manuals to a database that AI had access to, made like a AI bot for the company. And basically you can like take all of someone's knowledge or all of these like manual knowledge, give AI access to it, and then now the team, instead of asking like a project manager or a senior person in the company, like, hey, like what transmission do we need to use in this situation, they just ask the bot, and then the bot tells them the answer. And then it's like you can integrate it with Slack or whatever, so like if they query something and the bot doesn't know, then it will like ask me. Like for me, I could upload all my painting technical stuff, and someone types in like, hey, what paint do we need for vertical concrete in this scenario, and the bot's like, oh, I don't know. So it asks me, and then I type in the answer, and then it relays it back to the employee. But now the database has been updated. So now, like when someone gets that question gets answered again, asked again, it has the answer. There's also applications where you could like collaborate with other contractors or other industry people, make like a meta bot where like it was a bunch of like databases combined. It's gonna be interesting.
You know, it's fascinating. You brought all that up. Craig and I talk a lot about AI, both on and off the podcast. And I never even thought about any of those things related to contractors. That's great, Aaron. Hey, listen, we're going to take our final short break to hear from our corporate sponsors. And when we come back with our guest, Aaron Edward, for our Plead the Fifth section of the show, we're going to find out if there's anything he struggles with. Don't walk away. We'll be right back with more of the Shrimp Tank. And Plead the Fifth is brought to you by our corporate sponsors, Ideal Life 360, Cornerstone Financial, First Underwriters Insurance, BC Fitness Studio, and Upstart Group, and Port Ludlow Resort. I didn't want to leave them out. I almost missed them. Sorry about that. To all of them, thank you. Please visit our website at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle to learn more about these terrific companies. Now back to the show.
All right. Well, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank, where we are interviewing the best and brightest thought leaders in the greater Puget Sound area. I am Craig Swanson, co-hosting with Dan, and our guest today is Aaron Edward of AV Painting. For our next segment, Plead the Fifth.
And Aaron, this is Plead the Fifth. It's where we are going to pepper you with even harder questions, maybe, I don't know, about business, about life, about adventuring, about painting. You're going to then have to answer, or you have to plead the fifth. You can only plead the fifth once. Then you win absolutely nothing, but we hope you have some fun. Look, we can sometimes be our very own worst critics, wondering, both as an entrepreneur, as an adventurer, as all of the things you're doing, is there something that you struggle with?
Yes, there is, Dan. So one thing recently that came up for me was my time management. So, you know, I've struggled with various addictions in the past, like cannabis or what have you, where it's just like an obvious physical, you know, kind of like a just classic like drug addiction type of thing. And like as I've moved past those ones, I noticed the same patterns crop up in like more subtle ways, you know, like it could be now it's like Twitter or whatever vice I'm using to kind of distract me from the present moment. You know, that's like all addictions in some sense are created from the same root problem of like not being okay in this present moment. So as I noticed that kind of like crop up in other ways, I realized, you know, I have all these strategies, like putting all these blockers on my phone so I can't access websites all across all my devices, or like things that I don't want to totally block, like social media, I'll block it for certain times, no dating apps like until after 6 p.m., that kind of thing. And it really helps. But sometimes like it still doesn't really solve the root problem, because I might still just like waste a bunch of time on like some random website in the evening instead of like doing something that I was really like either really like focusing on relaxing, like really doing something enjoyable. It's just the procrastination that's the worst, because I'm neither getting something productive done, nor am I like relaxing and enjoying myself. I'm just kind of in this bad in between zone. So I struggle with that. And I recently, like, I realized that the core issue is me like not planning my time effectively. So I've like started like writing out my schedule for the day and like even like printing out some stuff that are like 15-minute increments. So like my whole day is like 15-minute, has little lines for each 15 minutes. And then like, okay, what do I want to get done today? And then really it like forces me to consciously think like, how do I want to spend my time today? And then I can have like a plan, and then I can have like a track, like if I want to, like what actually happened. And even if I get totally off script, like it's just so much better to start with a plan, because the act of like thinking about like, that's the hard part, is like actually thinking and planning and prioritizing my like 100 things on my list. Okay, what do I actually want to do today? Because the reason I procrastinate is because that task seems too difficult. And I'm like, well, fuck, there's so many things I got to do. I don't know which one, I don't know where to start. I don't want to take the effort to actually try and figure out what to do. But once I actually figure it out, it's not that hard.
That there's a lot of wisdom in that. I wrote that down because I want to think about that. All addiction has a root in not being okay with the present moment. That's got me thinking of some things. I kind of on, I mean, I don't know if this is a good segue to that, but like at the very beginning, you talked about death-defying feats, and I was just kind of curious, how close to death have you come, or how many times have you come close to it? Do you have a good story there?
Let's see. Well, I've narrowly I've had a lot of close calls in the mountains. Like I've had multiple avalanche situations. One time I was skiing solo on the Spearhead Glacier in the Blackcomb backcountry, and I triggered an avalanche in a whiteout, and I just like suddenly was like tumbling, and then lost both skis, both poles, ended up like with no equipment, like on a flat spot before the next slope, and I was like half buried. So then I had to hike like up a ridge and then down and then back into the resort. And then a snow groomer, like a cat operator, was like, hey, like, are you lost? And I was like, no, I know where I am. I just don't have any skis. And then he gave me a ride back in down the mountain. There's been other times, things like that, where I've like slipped above exposure, like, which is like above a big, like a 300-foot cliff. And I was like, sliding headfirst into this like death cliff, and then just like reached out and caught a rock and like swung around and arrested myself. And I've had a good mentor die in an avalanche in Alaska. So that was like when my friend died, actually, that was like kind of like a turning point where I was like, I kind of just felt like the universe was like, this is maybe like I could tell like skiing was never going to be the same again, just like for the whole vibe, because that was like everyone associated me with this person. It was like the whole energy of the community was going to be off. And I was just like, I think I need to switch it up and like go do something else. And I wasn't really like sad about it. Like my view of death is not like, I have like spiritual views on like, everything's connected, and like maybe we have like multiple lifetimes, and it's like, if we die when we die, and it's not like necessarily something to be like so devastated about. It's always sad, but like I'm not so attached to that idea like some people are. So I just saw it as a sign where I was like, I think this is a sign I need to like do something else. That kind of kickstarted my entrepreneurial shift as well.
Well, I've got a lighthearted question for the last one of the mix. I would assume, just in your business, that you have. Well, let me just ask. I assume that sometimes the choice of color in the house can create some arguments between husband and wife when you were out trying to get the job done. Is that correct?
I don't know.
No?
I think the wife always picks the color.
Okay. Well, I was just my question was going to be, do you have any really good juicy arguments that came up around house color in your years of doing this?
Juicy arguments? I don't know. I could tell you some stories. Yesterday we painted the whole house the wrong color because the store made the wrong color. They like typed it in wrong, and then our painter didn't check it. And then the lady came and was like, "Hey, you painted my condo the wrong color, and I'm supposed to move in today." So that's kind of stuff happens. Or at one time I like onboarded a new subcontractor and sent him 2 jobs, and then he got the work orders mixed up, and he painted like all the materials from one job were used on the other job. So he painted this guy's house blue and it's supposed to be gray. And I tried to sell him on it. I was like, this is like a higher quality paint. We could give it to you for like no extra, or I'll give you a discount. He's like, nah, I want it gray. But yeah, that's kind of interesting stuff happens. But as far as like people arguing about it, it's like they might have some bickering like, but I typically don't get to hear those.
Okay, that's pretty cool though. I could definitely see coming back and seeing the completely wrong color. That would be an experience. Aaron, thank you so much for being a guest on the Shrimp Tank here. For our listeners that want to get in touch with you or learn more about either your adventuresome side or house painting in Seattle, how can they get more information?
Follow me on social media. I'll be posting updates when podcast launches and whatnot. My handle's the same across Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. It's Aaron, and the letter V is in Victor, and then Edward. Aaron V. Edward.
Very cool. All right. And for all of you, that information will be on this podcast at shrimptankpodcast.com/Seattle. Find this episode, and all the information will be links right there for Aaron and all the details you want. And wherever you listen to your podcast, whether it's iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, I love Overcast, please follow us on your show's social and follow us on follow us on our social media pages, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
Well, Aaron, it's been a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for coming on the show. Can't wait to follow you and all of your adventures, both in painting and in running and everything else you're doing. Thanks for being on. Craig, turns out you're going back to back. Did you remember that? Did you know that? We're back to back. Michelle Bomberger is with her husband traveling in Scotland. I've been trying to harass her on social media to take some pictures of golf courses because all I see is other hillsides and sheep. So she's been tasked with doing that. Working on our next week's show guest. I've got a couple that I'm going to finalize. One I'll finalize here, so that'll be a little bit of a surprise, but it won't be a surprise. Craig is going to be here. So please join us every Wednesday, not only next Wednesday, July 5th, after the 4th of July, but please join us every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Pacific. In the meantime, be safe, be well, and be prosperous, and a happy Independence Day to all, because until next week, the shrimp is back in the tank. So long.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond, and the shrimp